It's time for Fresh Oil with singer-songwriter and pastor Keith Manley, a program designed to minister the gospel of God's grace and to bring fresh oil to the brokenhearted. And now, with today's program, Pastor Keith Manley.
Hello, friend. Welcome to Fresh Oil. I'm Pastor Keith, and I want to welcome you to a new series that I believe is going to speak to a group of people who rarely hear a series designed specifically for them. We're calling it The Men Who Walked Behind the Famous. 5 programs, 5 men, 5 lives that were by every external measurement lived in the shadow of someone more visible. And yet, and this is the thesis of this entire series, the man in the shadow was not less important than the man in the light. He was not less valued by God. He was not less called, less gifted, less strategic to the purposes of God than the person everyone was watching. He was simply called to a different position, to a different kind of faithfulness, to a different expression of the same God-given purpose. We live in a culture that celebrates the visible, that honors the platform and the audience and the number of people who know your name, that tends, even in the church, to measure the significance of a life by the size of its public footprint. And what that culture produces, even among believers, even in ministry, is a subtle but persistent pressure to resist the second chair role. This series is a direct challenge to that pressure, because the Bible does not share our culture's obsession with the visible. The Bible honors the faithful. And the faithful, as we are going to see this week, are very often the ones nobody is watching. We begin with a man who spent nearly his entire life in the shadow of his younger brother, who was older than his brother, more experienced as a communicator, and yet submitted to his brother's leadership for 40 years in the wilderness and beyond, whose name is forever attached to the golden calf, one of the most catastrophic failures of leadership in the Old Testament, and yet who was also the first high priest of Israel, the father of the entire Aaronic priesthood, and the man who held up the arms that won the battle of Rephidim. His name is Aaron, and his story has more to teach the church about faithful second-chair leadership than almost any other life in the Old Testament. Let me establish who Aaron is before we look at the specific passages, because the background matters enormously to understanding the nature of his calling. Aaron is the son of Amram and Jochebed, of the tribe of Levi. He is 3 years older than Moses. Exodus 7:7 tells us this. When Moses and Aaron went before Pharaoh, Aaron was 83 and Moses was 80. Aaron is the firstborn son. In the ancient Near East, that is a position of enormous cultural and practical significance. The firstborn son carries the weight of inheritance, of leadership. He is, by birth order and by the conventions of his world, the one who is supposed to be in front. And then God calls Moses at a burning bush in the wilderness of Midian. And Moses is given one of the most extraordinary divine commissions in human history. Go to Pharaoh, tell him to let my people go. Lead 2 million people out of Egypt and toward a land I promised their ancestors 400 years ago. And Moses, Exodus 4:10, immediately begins to explain why he is the wrong person for this. "Oh, my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." he cannot speak, or believes he cannot, whether this is a genuine physical limitation, a stutter, a speech impediment, or whether it is the crisis of confidence of a man who has been living in the wilderness of Midian for 40 years after fleeing Egypt in disgrace, we cannot say with certainty. But his self-assessment is clear. He does not believe he has the communication ability to stand before Pharaoh and deliver the word of the Lord. And God's response, verse 14, is one of the most important sentences in the entire Exodus narrative for our purposes this week. Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. Is there not Aaron? God already has a plan. Before Moses finishes articulating the problem, God already has the solution in place. And the solution is a man who has been living his ordinary life in Egypt while Moses was in Midian. A man who has spent 40 years in the land of slavery while Moses was tending sheep in the wilderness. A man who has not had a burning bush experience, has not heard the divine name revealed, has not stood on holy ground, but Aaron can speak. And Aaron is coming, God says. He is already on his way. The preparation has been happening without Aaron's knowledge of it. God has been positioning the second chair man while the first chair man was still raising his objections. Verse 16 is the verse I want to hold carefully. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. He shall be your mouth. Aaron is commissioned not to deliver his own message, but to be the instrument through which Moses' message reaches the people. He is the voice, Moses is the source. Aaron is the channel through which the word that God has given Moses arrives at the ears of the people. Now, I want to be precise about what this means and what it does not mean. This is not a diminishment of Aaron. God does not say, Aaron, you are going to do Moses' administrative work for him. He says, Aaron, you are going to be his mouth, his voice, the audible expression of the word that God has given his brother. You are going to stand before Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the ancient world, and speak on behalf of the man standing beside you and the God standing above you both. That is not a minor calling. That is not a subordinate role in any sense that should make Aaron feel undervalued. Being the voice of the Word of God is one of the most significant positions a human being can occupy in the economy of divine purpose. But it does require something specific of Aaron. It requires him to consistently, over 40 years, prefer the word given to his brother over any word he might generate on his own. It requires him to take his eloquence, the very gift that God himself credits him with when he says, I know that he can speak well, and subordinate it entirely to the communication of Moses' vision rather than his own. That is harder than it sounds. And we will see that it is harder than Aaron always managed it. But first, the battle of Rephidim. Exodus 17, because I want to show you Aaron at his best before we look at his worst. The Amalekites attack Israel in the wilderness. Joshua leads the fighting force into the valley, and Moses goes up the hill with the staff of God, and Aaron and Hur go with him. And we studied this passage in our Borrowed Faith series, The Arms Up and Israel Prevails, The Arms Down and Amalek Prevails. And the arms grow heavy, and Aaron and Hur find a stone and sit Moses on it and hold up his hands, one on each side, until the going down of the sun. I said then what I want to say again now. Aaron standing on the hill, holding the arm of his younger brother, is one of the most significant acts of second chair faithfulness in the Old Testament. There is no glory in it. There is no eloquence required. The gifted speaker is doing something that requires no speaking at all. There is nothing visible about it from the valley where the battle is happening. No one who is fighting below knows that the arms being held up belong to two men as much as to one. Aaron does it anyway, for hours, until the sun goes down and the battle is won. That is what second chair faithfulness looks like on its best days. Not the eloquent speech before Pharaoh, not the dramatic confrontation with the powers. Standing on a hill in the heat of the day, holding up an arm that isn't yours, sustaining an intercession that carries someone else's name for as long as the battle requires it. 3 teaching points from Aaron. The first, the second chair calling is not a lesser calling. It is a different expression of the same divine purpose. God said, I know that he can speak well. God was not unaware of Aaron's gifts. He was not assigning him to the second chair because Aaron lacked the capacity for the first. He was assigning him to the second chair because the second chair was where Aaron's gifts would best serve the purposes of God. The gifted communicator in service of another person's vision is not a wasted gift. It is a gift correctly deployed. The second teaching point, the most dangerous moment for the second chair leader is when the primary leader is absent. Aaron made the golden calf when Moses was on the mountain. The temptation of the second chairperson, when the primary leader is not present, is to stop being the voice of someone else's vision and start generating their own. To fill the silence of the primary leader's absence with something that comes from the crowd rather than from God. Aaron could not hold the line without Moses. The second chair leader who cannot hold the vision when the primary leader is away has not yet fully internalized the vision. He is still performing it rather than owning it. The third teaching point, faithfulness in the second chair means being willing to transfer what you carry to the next generation without insisting on your own continuation. Aaron stood on a mountain and watched his priestly garments placed on his son. He went through the transfer of his own ministry while he was alive to witness it, and he received it without protest. That is the mark of a person who has understood that the calling was never about them. The garments were not Aaron's possession. They were God's trust. And God decides when the trust is transferred. Aaron held up arms that weren't his. He spoke words that originated with his brother. He wore garments that he would ultimately transfer to his son. He failed catastrophically once, and God kept him anyway. And the priesthood that bore his name interceded for Israel for generations after he was gone. Tomorrow, we go to a man who is often treated as Joshua's assistant, a supporting character in the conquest narrative. But Caleb is one of the most remarkable figures in the entire Old Testament. A man who waited 45 years for his inheritance and arrived to claim it at 85 years old with the same fire he had at 40. Caleb is coming tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us today for Fresh Oil with Pastor Keith Manley. Fresh Oil is an outreach of Grace Family Church in Rockford, Illinois, and can be heard each weekday at this same time. You can reach us online at weneedgod.com. Until next time, remember, God's love for you is unconditional, and He makes His mercies new every morning.